Chapter 6, The Unlikely Story of Diamond Dallas Page. The first time I got any serious attention for being an athlete was when I was awarded All-County my senior year in high school. When I was at Ocean County College, I was awarded the first team All-Region, which gave me the recognition that helped me land a scholarship to Coastal Carolina College in Myrtle Beach. But after a couple of years, it turned out that higher education just wasn't for me. Coastal was a nice school, and when I got to Myrtle Beach that first Friday night, everything made me go, wow, this place is awesome. That Saturday night, though, I found out that the bars close at midnight. I had never heard of anything like that. I just thought, what the hell just happened? Plus, you couldn't buy any booze in the stores after midnight, and the county was dry on Sundays. I was really disillusioned with the place. When I showed up at Coastal, I weighed 210 pounds. I was shredded, in the best playing shape of my life. But on the first Sunday before I ever even saw Coastal's basketball court, I came across this giant water slide where they were holding a contest to see who could ride it the longest. I'd never even seen a water slide before, and riding it was fun as hell. Except that I put in 21 hours riding the fucking thing, and while I was sick as hell with strep throat, over the next 6 days I lost 18 pounds. Then, right when I was starting to heal and could finally eat a little, my wisdom teeth came in, and once again I couldn't eat anything. 3 days later I weighed 185 fucking pounds. Those 9 days killed me. On top of that, I still couldn't read, and I was weak as shit. I'd gotten by at Ocean County College because I had a crew. My core base of people who could read to me, explain to me what the chapters were. At Coastal, I didn't have anybody. I would have had to figure it out on my own, and I just wasn't ready for that. Before I'd gotten sick, I told myself, you know what? I'm going to prove to myself that I can get through this schoolwork. After I got sick, I wrote down a list of reasons to leave and reasons to stay. There were like 100 reasons to leave and 2 reasons to stay. That's how I made the decision that, yeah, school just wasn't for me. I don't think I had enough mental confidence at the time. Now, if I'd wanted to be there more than anything, I'm sure I would have got it. But that's not how I felt. Back then, it was more about the parties, the bar business, and enjoying my early 20s. So, I decided to go back to the Jersey Shore. First, though, I had to tell the coach, because I wasn't just going to skip town. This may not sound like something the unstoppable Diamond Dallas Page would do, but I wasn't that guy yet. I can look back on my decision to leave school without regret because I was eventually able to change the story that I told myself. And everything in my life turned out great. The point is that people may find their drive, their persistence, their ability to believe in themselves at different points in their lives. Depending on where you are in life, there's always a path you can take to be successful. If I only knew then what I know now, I may have stayed in school. Who knows? But at the time I was thinking, I'm 22 years old. Basketball is not going to be my life. I'm never going to make it to the pros. My studies suck, so I probably won't make it here anyway, if I can't friggin' read or write worth a shit. The funny thing was, when I finally got to the gym and went looking for the coach's office, I came across a wrestling ring. That helped cement my decision. I thought, wrestling? That's truly what I've wanted to do since I was a little kid. I took it as a sign. So when I got back to Jersey, I hooked up with a buddy of mine, John Shipley, and we went to see a pro wrestling show at the convention center on the beach in Asbury Park. We knew that sometimes you'd see the wrestlers outside the venue because the building had no air conditioning and it got hot as hell in there. The first wrestler we saw was Greg the Hammer Valentine. I went running up to him and yelled out, "Hey Hammer, how do I get into wrestling?" I bet a million kids asked him that. What was Hammer's response? "Fuck off." Then he walked inside. That night, Gorilla Monsoon was in the main event. After the match, he just grabbed his bag from the table next to the ring and started walking out with the rest of the crowd. John and I ran up to him as he was trying to get out of the building. "Hey, Gorilla," I said, "how do we get into wrestling?" He wasn't really paying attention, so we just kept at him. "Come on, Gorilla, we're not going to stop. We really respect you, man, but we got to know. Give us some kind of guidance." Finally, he told us to contact a guy named Tito Torres and gave us a phone number. The next thing you know, John and I were driving one day a week to Jersey City to train with this Puerto Rican dude who, because of his thick accent, I could barely understand. We worked in this little storefront room that was 15 by 15 feet, while the ring was 14 by 14 feet. I actually measured it once. We ended up having 3 matches at independent wrestling halls, and I performed horribly. In my third match, when I went over the top rope, I seriously tweaked my knee. The same knee that got slammed by that car when I was 12 and ended my football dreams. Now my 3-month stint as a wrestler was over. I was really bummed, but there was plenty to take my mind off it. I was building a little bit of a name for myself in the bar business. With an ex-boyfriend of my mom's named Bob Weger, gave me a shot at managing his little rock and roll bar called 23 Valley Street. It might have been a small place, but it was a blast. I ran it for about 2 years, and then, in 1980, the film Urban Cowboy was released. It was John Travolta's third blockbuster following Grease and Saturday Night Fever. Grease had started a whole 50s craze. Saturday Night Fever had made disco explode, and now Urban Cowboy was doing the same for country music. I loved country way before it was cool. I'd been getting restless anyway, but the movie sealed the deal. I loved the image of the Urban Cowboy, and I desperately wanted to be part of that scene. As much as New Jersey was my home, I knew that it was never going to be the center of country music universe. Besides, like I say, it's always great to get out of your comfort zone. So I hopped in the car and drove to Houston. That's where I get the real education for a barman. My first true mentor was a guy named Bud Reynolds. Bud took me under his wing because I was a good bartender and he liked my work ethic. He was like this master guru for opening up clubs. He started teaching me that in whatever you do, there's a true art to promoting, to branding, as far as nightclubs went, from the layout of the floor to how you set the bar up, to where you position the bars, to where the dance floor is. There's a whole science to getting people to socialize and have fun more easily. After about 9 or 10 months, I went back to Jersey for a wedding and saw that there was this new spot called Club Xanadu opening up just a block away from the famous Stone Pony in Asbury Park. So I stopped by and asked who the owner was. The owner was a guy named Bruce Koenig, and he was looking for a head bartender. I said, well, I'm not interested in being the head bartender, but I'll be the general manager. I literally created the position for myself. Timing is everything. As I was building the place, I was in constant contact with Bud. He was an awesome mentor for me as I was building Xanadu. By the time I got done with the place, we had 4 round bars. 2 of them were up on the platforms overlooking the crowd on the main floor, while the dance floor was a step down from there with a killer sound system. My favorite room at Club Xanadu was my kamikaze bar. Whenever I felt like the energy needed a bump, I would start playing World War II footage on all the TVs in the bar. Kamikaze planes crashing into ships, blowing up in the water, getting shot down, and whenever those movies came on, I would start blaring the air raid sirens. It was the first thing you heard. It got the crowd geared up as I grabbed the microphone and started shouting, "We're under attack!" The beat of the music would be blasting along with the sirens, and I'd be working the mic, announcing, "Kamikaze attack! 75-cent kamikazes!" This would always get people psyched up and shifting into high party gear, and it also got them drinking. I created a party atmosphere. Maybe some people aren't drinking, but they're at Jersey Shore Dance Club on a Saturday night. Then it's, oh well, 75-cent shots? Well, I guess I'll have a few of those. Next thing you know, a few shots turn into 7 more shots for their crew that wasn't discounted. Club Xanadu was killing it. Every now and then, this pretty baby-faced kid named Johnny would come around and ask me to come check out his band at this little spot called the Fast Lane. I was just another guy who ran a club in Asbury. And there were quite a few of us, so I was always on the lookout for local talent. I went and saw Johnny's band. There were maybe 40 people in the audience, but 25 of them were girls, and most of them were pretty fucking hot. So I knew there was something going on. Long story short, I talked Bruce into bringing in the band. I wanted to create a night around them because I had heard Springsteen had gotten up and played with them, and he wasn't doing that with just anybody. I told Bruce, let's give John Monday nights or something and try to build a crowd around him. Bruce went for it, but not in the big room. He put them in one of the smaller rooms, which didn't really do well, and he ended up trying to screw them on the payoff. It was like $100 shy, so I just pulled it out of my own pocket and paid the band. 3 years later, I was doing promotions for a bunch of bars in Fort Myers, Florida, when Johnny's band released its monster hit album, Slippery When Wet. How did I know he was talking about Bon Jovi? At that point, I had to stop thinking of the kid as Johnny, because now the whole world knew him as John Bon Jovi. Funny enough, my friend Tony, who would run Fastlane, got us tickets to see Bon Jovi in St. Petersburg, Florida, along with backstage passes. Even before we went back, I said to Tony, if John even acknowledges that we live, he's the real deal. Because when you get that big, you can start to believe your own shit. I don't know anybody who was bigger than John at the moment. They were the #1 band in the world at the time. Sure enough, as we came walking backstage, Johnny saw Tony and he gave him a huge hug, and then he looked at me and went, "Hey, Paige!" And he gave me a big hug too. I thought, wow, this kid, he's a Jersey boy. From there, over the years, at different levels of my own celebrity, he was always super classy when we crossed paths. A genuine guy and a great person. The way he treated me was something I carried with me all through my wrestling career, because that's the guy I wanted to be. I would never want to be the guy who forgot where he came from, who thought he was bigger than what he really was. It's one of the things that helped me keep my feet on the ground as I went on this journey of my life. Xanadu is where I built my name as a GM, that's general manager, in the bar business. I learned everything from staffing to operations to promotions. I'd also be in and out of the DJ booth, pumping the people up and being the MC for all of our contests. Bikini, hot legs, lip sync, you name it. Sounds like an awesome bar. That's where I really excelled, being on stage and doing the PR, and boy, would that knowledge come in handy in the years to come. After a couple of years through the nightlife in Jersey, after a couple of years though, the nightlife in Jersey started dying, and I knew it was time to hit the road again. I'd heard Fort Myers was an uncharted territory, which turned out to be true. It was just a sleepy little Florida town when I first got there. There was practically no competition. Over the course of a few years, though, doing promotions for high clubs like Elations, Temptations, and Norma Jean's, I'd helped turn it into a major party scene. I loved the excitement, the nightlife, the glamour, and the girls. And all the time I was building up the reputation of Fort Myers club scene. I was also building up my personality along with my own reputation as a bit of a bad boy. People knew me by my long hair, my rock and roll gear, and especially my pink Cadillac. My whole life was like a show, like a fucking music video. At the same time, there I was stepping into my 30s, and I was starting to wonder if there wasn't something more I could be doing with my life. Instead of partying 7 nights a week, maybe I could cut it down to 5 or 4 nights. So I tried that out. Still, there was something missing. Something was gnawing at me, and I didn't know what it was. Then bang! The missing piece walked right into my bar. One Friday night at Norma Jean's Dance Club, one of the most popular spots in the city, which I happened to be running, the place was getting slammed and I was back in my office watching the security camera feed. That's when I see a guy walk in who's got long hair, a biker mustache, all decked out in leather gear. I'm thinking that guy looks like Jake the Snake fucking Roberts. I came around the outside of the building because the club was too packed to try to walk through the middle of it. I went in the front door and asked one of the waitresses, "Did Jake the Snake just walk in here?" She goes, "Yeah, I think that was him." I took off, not running, but quickly walking until I saw him. Then I slowed down because, of course, I've got to play it cool. I bellied up to the bar, looked over and said, "Are you Jake the Snake Roberts?" He said, "Who's asking?" I said, "The guy that runs this joint." "Yeah, I am." I said, "Then what are we drinking?" That's how Jake and I started our relationship, cocktailing, like I started with pretty much everybody back then. We started drinking shots and beers. Jake didn't pay for a thing. What I figured out was that for the guys in the WWF, Vince McMahon hadn't gotten sued by the World Wildlife Fund yet. Fort Myers marked the halfway point between Miami and Tampa, which were both major pro wrestling cities. Literally, you had to come across Alligator Alley. Literally, you had to come across Alligator Alley and then go up I-75. And if you wanted to take a break, Fort Myers was and still is just 6 miles off the road. After Jake came in, the boys started to realize that they could lay over there for the night instead of driving all 300 miles in one shot. They could stop in and get some free drinks and some great hospitality. The next thing I knew, Jesse the Body Ventura is there. The Bushwhackers were there. The $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, Shawn Michaels, I mean everybody. So more and more I had pro wrestling on my mind. I mean, it had always been there, ever since I was a kid, and when I'd given it a shot out of college. Then, one night, I was at Smokey's bar picking up the money from the register to count the drawers when the video for Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun came on the TV. So there's Captain Lou Albano, who's been a legend of pro wrestling forever, playing Cindy's dad. She's twisting his arm and kicking him in the ass, and as I'm looking at that, and I'll never forget it as long as I live, I said, rock and wrestling? I should have been a part of that. Then I went back to my office where everyone would come back to count their money and of course have some late night cocktails. At some point, Smokey comes back and says, "Hey Paige, Jay, what do you mean rock and wrestling? You should have been a part of that." I said, "Well, I did when I was a kid." He said, "What?" "Yeah, when I was like 22. "Get the fuck out of here. What was your name?" "Handsome Dallas Page." He said, "Well, you can forget about using that gimmick anymore." Of course, everybody started laughing at that, and then we go back to drinking and counting our money. But it just couldn't get the thought out of my fucking head. I said, "You know, I'm too old to be a wrestler. What if I was a manager? And what if my name was Diamond Dallas Page?" Everybody was like, "Yeah, remember we've been drinking a while, so everyone was getting easier to entertain." Still, I wrote it down on a blotter at my desk. Now a little time went by, shot, drink, and I still can't get it out of my head. It's getting late and I've got a good buzz going. I said, "Man, Jimmy Hart had the Hart Foundation. I could have the Diamond Exchange. Shot, drink, and I wrote that down on the blotter. A little more time goes by. You know, there's a bunch of women involved in wrestling. None of them are really that hot. Miss Elizabeth's beautiful, but she's the girl next door hot. What if I had a whole stable of ladies and I called them the Diamond Dolls and they were stripper hot?" Everybody cheered. Hell, at about 3 in the morning, anything is possible. So I just kept going. I said, "Diamond Dallas Page, my wrestlers are from the Diamond Exchange, and I have the Diamond Dolls. Man, that B-A-double-D bad. That's B-A-double-D bad." Then I looked around and said, "Did I just steal that from somebody or did I just make that shit up?" And I kept writing it all down on the blotter. Well, none of them had ever heard it before, so I wrote it down. And then I started writing all of it down, and it sounded terrific. All of that sort of came naturally to me. Ever since I'd started doing promotions for Norma Jeans, you could always hear my commercials on the local radio stations where I'd drum up business by imitating the biggest wrestling stars of the day. Around town, people had started calling me the Voice, because I'd be doing a spot as myself and then suddenly break into my Randy Macho Man Savage voice. "Oh yeah, don't miss the Hot Legs contest tonight. Ooh yeah, dig it, don't miss it." I did that with Hulk Hogan and Jesse the Body and other people too. I mean, people had seen me at Norma Jeans with Jake the Snake, with Ted DiBiase, with the Bushwhackers, so Randy might be doing a spot with me. I never said it was him, but I never said it wasn't him either. About a week later, this local cable show called the Party News Network wanted to do a story on me, on The Voice, because my crazy radio ads were becoming so popular. When recording commercials, I'd do anything to set Norma Jeans apart. It was all about making us seem different, unique even. Hell, I was unique. I was unique enough for this show to track me down and do a story on me. They filmed me in my 1952 Cadillac at the radio station where I recorded the spots, and at my office at Norma Jeans. I just happened to be wearing a WWF WrestleMania t-shirt during the shoot. At some point while we're in my office, they asked, "So where does the voice come from?" I was sitting at the very same desk where I wrote all my shit down on the blotter, and I looked down and saw it written there. There was a pair of white sunglasses sitting there as well. So I grabbed those sunglasses and put them on, and in my best pro wrestling hype voice announced, "The voice comes from Diamond Dallas Page, Daddy." I was born to be a professional wrestling manager. It's big, it's bad, it's the Norma Jean voice. Then I put the glasses down and did the rest of the interview in my normal Page J voice. When the piece aired a couple of days later, I got a call from my girl at the front desk. "Paige," she said, "there's someone on the phone asking for Diamond Dallas Page." I picked up the phone and said, "Smokey, fuck you," and I hung up. But the girl called back and said, "Paige, that wasn't Smokey." The guy laughed and he said, Can you tell him it's Smitty? I got my own radio show and I want him to come on." I was like, "What? Listen, Smitty, I made all that shit up. I don't really do it." "Who gives a fuck?" he said. "It's radio. I think you'd be entertaining as hell on our show, and we're going to have Captain Lou Albano on." "Seriously?" I said. "I fucking love Captain Lou." "Absolutely. I'm in." What were the odds of that? I was just watching Captain Lou in the Cyndi Lauper video saying I should have been part of Rockin' Wrestling, and suddenly I was going to be doing a radio show with Captain Lou. Now that was crazy. When I got to the studio a couple of days later, I was prepared, and I really got into it. I played this fictional character who comes from Johannesburg, South Africa, where, naturally, he owns a bunch of diamond mines. I was just fucking around, but the bit went over so well that Smitty asked me to come back a month later to do a show with Sergeant Slaughter. Sarge was such a nice guy. Both guys played along like I really was this guy, just like I would do. They were putting me over. Fake it till you make it. That night, Smitty said to me, "You really need to do something with this Diamond Dallas Page thing." I'm like, "Do what? It's just an idea in my head." "Look," he said, "I got a friend of mine named Rob Russian, and he used to be a big boxing promoter, but now he's in the AWA. I'll get you his address and send him a videotape or something." The AWA was the American Wrestling Association. At first, I was thinking I'd send him a videotape, but of what? Then I sat down and thought about it some more. What would grab their attention? Understand, I never did this before. I had no idea what I was doing. I was making it up as I went along. I wrote storylines for 3 wrestlers. One was named Big Bad John, and he was going to be a miner in my diamond mine, wearing a hard hat and a t-shirt, with chains around his chest and dirt all over his face and body. And then there was Rock Hard Rick, who was chiseled stone and bad to the bone. A bodybuilder, a pretty boy, and the next one was Ted E. Bear, who was a little person and wore a collar around his neck and acted like he was a little bear. He would come out with the diamond dolls. I got 3 video promos on a VHS tape. I brought in a friend of mine named Captain Jack, who'd been a radio announcer for decades, to interview us. He had these amazing pipes, and I sent the tape to the AWA. 2 weeks later, Rob Russian called me. "Listen, we've seen your videotape. We want to bring you and your boys in for a tryout, but we've got one question. We've shown the tape around. Everybody likes your shtick, but no one's ever heard of you guys. Where are you guys wrestling at?" "Well," I said, "we have one problem, Rob. None of those guys can wrestle. Not yet, anyway." "What?" "I mean, they want to be wrestlers, but it's like a secret society. No one can figure out how to get in." I could feel the moment slipping away, so I took another shot. "What if I managed other guys while they were training?" "Don't call us," he said. "We'll call you." To me, that was my big shot, and I was sure I'd blown it. I mean, as I'm sitting here writing this, looking down at my Hall of Fame ring, it's hard to believe, but at that moment, I thought it was over. Yet, it turned out I'd made an impact on the AWA. Again, sometimes you've just got to have faith. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Greg, I can't pronounce this name, Greg Gain, the head of the AWA. Greg may not have been interested in the guys I gotten to pretend to be wrestlers, but he was interested in the guy who pretended to manage them. Sometimes, if you fake it till you make it, it actually starts to become real. He said, "I want you to bring all those crazy flashy clothes and a couple of those hot diamond dolls out to Las Vegas for a tryout." Holy shit. "Yeah," I said, trying to play it cool. "So when do you want to do this?" 2 weeks from last Saturday. He said, "We're going to film 4 shows. We're going to give you the opportunity, but don't be late." I hung up with them and called Leanne, the girl I was dating at the time, and asked her to come with me. I told her, I'll fly you to Vegas. We'll put on a little show. It'll be fun. She'd never done anything like it before, and she was scared out of her fucking mind. I calmed her down, told her all she'd have to do is walk out to the ring with me, be hot and have a bitchy attitude, and she'd be great. So we landed in Vegas and got a cab to the gig, which was off the beaten path. It was not even on the strip. It had been there for probably 30 or 40 years at the time, and it was as seedy as fucking Vegas can get. They sent us to an auditorium where there were probably 2,000 people watching, and they set me up with a bad company, Pat Tanica and Paul Diamond, who were the AWA's heavyweight tag team champions. You have to remember, back in '88, there were a shitload of people who believed wrestling was real, and man, did they get pissed when I got into talking shit that night. For starters, I walked up to the announcer and snatched the microphone away from him and introduced myself and bad company myself. Starting out being a heel, bad guy, is so much easier than trying to be a babyface, the good guy. You've got to remember, I'd never done anything like this before. It was a trip. But I had a decade in the nightclub business behind me, doing a hot leg contest, bikini contest, lip sync contest. I mean, you name it, I did it. It was all about getting the crowd to react. This was literally no different. I went off like I was cutting a promo. The Guerrero brothers this Thursday night in Minnesota, when you step into the ring with the B-A-D-D bad company, it's going to be like shooting spitballs at a battleship. I could talk and I had a look. I was 6 foot 6 inches in cowboy boots, while Pat and Paul were both under 6 feet tall. For some reason, even though I towered over my wrestlers, they kept me. Maybe it was because I had crazy charisma or grandiose, fucking over-the-top flavor. Whatever the reason, they kept me. I spent the next year working for the AWA, which aired on ESPN. I would fly in and film one day a month, and we'd film 4 TV shows. I was still living in Fort Myers, and while I wanted to branch out, I was still making great money in the nightclub business, so I had no intention of leaving my day and night job. I had to keep making a good living so I could continue to respect myself while I went after the dream. Lack of money is one of the fastest ways people lose their self-respect. I'm not talking about $1 million, I'm just talking about just being able to support myself and live the life I'd become accustomed to. I knew that I was never going to leave my nightclub job until I felt that the wrestling gig could take its place. The bottom line was that I knew I had to be involved with more events, bigger events, to make myself more valuable to the promotion. With that in mind, I knew that there was going to be a memorial for wrestling legend Eddie Graham in Tampa in a couple of months, and that I'd seriously be upping my stock if I could somehow be part of it. Excuse me for a minute, I need a drink. Where was I? I got a hold of Mike Graham, Eddie's son, who had followed in his dad's footsteps, and he asked me to come to the event. Next thing you know, Rock Hard Rick and I hopped into my caddy. But we only got 35 miles out of Fort Myers before my car blew a rod. As luck would have it, as we were waiting for AAA on the side of I-75, some good old boys pulled over in a pickup. They said, "Ain't you the guy from Norma Jeans?" I said, "Yeah. Is there any chance you boys are wrestling fans?" They told me, "Hell yeah." So I bribed them with beers and tickets to the event to drive us to Tampa in the bed of their truck. When we finally got to Tampa, I told Michael Graham the story, and he was really impressed I had made it to the memorial at all. But I didn't know how impressed he was until a month later when he called me with the opportunity of a lifetime, which I totally almost blew. I had fucking strep throat yet again. Fucking strep throat. And I had to be up for a 6 o'clock flight the next morning. So I wasn't talking to anyone. I was just trying to get some sleep and praying to get my voice back before the next gig. When my phone rang, I let it go to the answering machine, and then I heard, "Hey DDP, this is Michael Graham. Pick up the phone." I wasn't going to pick up the phone, but he kept at it, telling me, "I know you're there, pick up the phone." I picked it up and croaked, "Hey Mike, I'm sorry, I can't talk, I got strep throat." He said, "I don't want to hear that shit. I'm here with Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream. He's coming back to Florida. He's running a Florida Championship Wrestling. and he's going to open up that whole territory. He wants to bring a couple of the old timers in. I told him we've got to bring you in too. You're a fresh face. You've got great energy. So I'm going to put you on with Dusty, and I want you to blow him away. Mike, no, bro, I have nothing prepared, I said. I heard him handing the phone off, and then I heard hello. Even with just that one word, there was no mistaking his voice. That smooth, sweet, sugar-sweet southern comfort of a voice. I didn't even stop to think. I took a breath, and in my best Dusty Rhodes voice, I said, "Good God, Dusty Rhodes, the Tower of Power. The man of the hour, too sweet to be sour." I just fucking speed rapped a bunch of shit for maybe 30 or 40 seconds until my voice gave out. Then I said, "That's all I got, Dusty. I got strep throat." Hello? Nothing. Hello? Dusty? Complete silence. Then he says, "Was that a recording? Is that a recording, kid?" "No, Dusty, that was me." "I want you to come up and meet me," he said. "When can you come up?" I went to see them the following week. But I wanted them to know, first of all, that I knew not to act like a huge mark for them. Even though I was, but I wasn't going to act like it. I told Dusty and Michael that, as much as I loved the business and wanted to be involved with it, I wasn't going to quit my other job to make $200 a week as a manager. Managers were at the bottom of the food chain. The only ones that make less than managers were the refs. "Well, kid, I see a little Captain Lou in you, and I see a little Jesse Ventura in you, and I even see a little bit of me in you," Dusty said. "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to make you a top-tier manager, and I'm going to take you to Jesse Ventura and I'm going to make you the Jesse Ventura of the 90s. So not only did he want me to be a main event manager, Dusty wanted me to do color commentary, and Jesse Ventura was the best color commentator, maybe ever. So he was saying a lot. It was like a dream, but suddenly I was hit with that old emotional gravity, that self-doubt. "I can't possibly do that," I said. "I don't know a wrist lock from a wrist watch." "Don't worry about it, kid," Dream said. "Gordon Soley is going to walk you through it all." That's the moment that Diamond Dallas Page was really born. And that's the end of chapter 6. Next reading will be The Power of Believing.